Your muscles have a backdoor, a way to pull glucose out of your bloodstream that does not require insulin at all, no receptor, no signaling cascade, no waiting for your pancreas to cooperate. Most people with rising blood sugar have never been told this door exists, let alone that they can influence it in the 8 or 9 hours between dinner and morning. And here is what makes this interesting. The window where you may have the most influence over tomorrow's fasting glucose is not the daytime, when you are busy fighting food and stress. It is the evening. The stretch from your last bite to the moment you fall asleep turns out to be a chain of small, cheap, physical levers. None of them exotic, most of them things you already have in your house. The claim floating around biohacking circles is that stacking them can move fasting numbers in a way that sounds almost too good. Big if true. So let's actually pull it apart piece by piece and see how much of it survives. Insulin resistance is, at its core, a communication problem. Insulin is knocking on the door of your cells, and the cells are not answering. So your pancreas knocks harder, insulin levels climb, and over months and years, that chronically elevated insulin drives fat storage, inflammation, and eventually the slow slide from prediabetes toward type 2 diabetes. Conventional medicine reaches for medication to force the conversation. But there is a growing interest in what you can do before that point, using physiology instead of pharmacology as a first move. What we are going to build today is a single, connected, evening to overnight protocol, not a random pile of tips, one coherent sequence that follows the actual timeline of your evening. From what is on your dinner plate to a short walk, to a spoonful of vinegar, to the temperature of your bedroom, to the last supplement you take before your head hits the pillow. Every piece shares one job: getting glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells through pathways that lean less on insulin. Some of these levers have strong human evidence behind them. Some are more suggestive than proven. I will be clear about which is which as we go, because the honest strength of each piece is different, and you deserve to know that before you rearrange your night. Let's start with the biology, because the whole protocol only makes sense once you understand the two doors glucose can use to leave your blood. Door number 1 is the insulin-dependent route. Insulin binds to receptors on the surface of your muscle and fat cells, and that binding triggers a signaling cascade inside the cell. That binding eventually tells glucose transporters, specifically a transporter called GLUT4, to move to the cell surface and start hauling glucose inside. When you are insulin resistant, this cascade is sluggish. The receptor is being knocked on, but the downstream message gets garbled, and GLUT4 does not show up in the numbers you need. Here is where magnesium enters. Magnesium is a cofactor in this signaling process. The insulin receptor and the enzymes that carry its message forward depend on magnesium to function properly. Think of it less like the key and more like the oil that lets the lock turn. It is not the only thing that matters, but it is one genuinely important and genuinely correctable cofactor. If you are deficient, you are trying to run an insulin signal through a system that is missing one of its lubricants. Now, door number 2. And this is the one most people have never heard of. Your muscles can move that same GLUT4 transporter to the surface through a completely separate trigger: contraction. When a muscle actually works, when it shortens and lengthens under load, it recruits GLUT4 to pull glucose in without needing insulin to make the request. This is why exercise is so powerful for blood sugar. A working muscle is essentially prying open the back door and letting glucose flood in through a channel that does not care how insulin resistant you are. So now you have the mental model for the entire protocol. Everything we stack tonight is aimed at one of two things: making the insulin door open more smoothly, or opening the back door through muscle contraction. The reason the evening matters so much is that after dinner, you have a bolus of glucose entering your blood, and then, for most people, 8 hours of stillness where nothing is being pulled out. That combination, a glucose load followed by total inactivity, is what sets your fasting number in the morning. Change what happens in that window and you are changing the number you would read on a glucose meter before breakfast. Now let's build it, layer by layer. Magnesium deserves its own segment because it shows up twice in this story, once in insulin signaling and once in a second pathway most people miss. Beyond helping the insulin receptor register its message and helping GLUT4 respond, magnesium is also required for your body to activate vitamin D. Vitamin D has to be converted twice to reach its usable form. Magnesium is a cofactor in that conversion, so being low in magnesium can quietly leave you functionally low in active vitamin D, even if your intake looks fine on paper. Now, the numbers, and this is where I want to be careful with you. One frequently cited observational study found that people in the highest quartile of dietary magnesium intake had around 71% lower odds of showing elevated markers. That sounds enormous, but read it precisely. This is an association from people who ate the most magnesium-rich food, not a trial where a specific supplement dose reversed insulin resistance by 71%. People who eat plenty of leafy greens, nuts, seeds, and legumes tend to differ in a dozen other ways. They often exercise more, smoke less, and eat less processed food. Those confounders could be doing real work in that number. Large pooled analyses covering hundreds of thousands of people consistently find that higher magnesium intake tracks with meaningfully lower type 2 diabetes risk, on the order of a low double-digit percentage reduction. On forms, the discussion in this space generally favors magnesium glycinate, which absorbs well and has a calming quality, and magnesium threonate, which crosses into the brain for brain fog. Magnesium oxide is poorly absorbed and mostly acts as a laxative. There is also the transdermal route, Epsom salt baths a few times a week, as a gentler top-up. But before you buy anything, the dosing conversation has to happen with a doctor, and I will explain exactly why in a moment. Now let's walk through the actual evening in order. Start with dinner itself. The simplest lever is composition. A dinner that is smaller and lighter on refined carbohydrates gives your liver less glucose to process overnight. If you are going to eat your heavier carbohydrate load somewhere, lunch is the smarter window, because you typically have hours of daytime movement afterward to burn through it. With that dinner, consider apple cider vinegar, 1 to 2 tablespoons diluted in a full glass of water. The acetic acid appears to slow the rate at which your stomach empties, blunting how fast glucose hits your blood. It has to be diluted. Straight vinegar can erode tooth enamel and irritate your esophagus, and if you hate the taste, capsule forms exist. Then, roughly 20 to 30 minutes after your last bite, take a 10-minute walk. This is the back door in action. You do not need to sweat, you just need your leg muscles contracting, pulling glucose out right as it's climbing. Backward from there, think about hydration. Your kidneys clear excess glucose through urine, but you want that hydration front-loaded across your day and tapered off maybe 2 hours before bed. About an hour before bed, drop your bedroom temperature. Sleeping cool, somewhere in the mid-60s Fahrenheit, can activate brown adipose tissue, a metabolically active fat that burns glucose to generate heat. This is a gentler, more speculative lever, but it nudges metabolism upward passively. And finally, right before sleep, magnesium glycinate, taken at night because it supports insulin signaling and overnight repair. So let's stitch the whole evening into one clean sequence you could actually run tonight. Earlier in the day, you have front-loaded your water. Dinner arrives lighter. You take your diluted vinegar. 20 minutes later, you're out for a walk. About an hour before bed, you set the thermostat down, and as the last step, you take your magnesium. Notice what this stack is doing. It is not relying on any single miracle. It is layering several independent mechanisms. The whole point is redundancy. No one lever here is dramatic on its own, and I would be skeptical of anyone promising a guaranteed drop, because individual responses vary. But stacked and repeated nightly, these are cheap, low-risk habits. The way to know if it is working for you is to actually measure. Check your fasting glucose in the morning before and after a few weeks. Let your own data tell you whether this protocol earns a permanent place in your evening. A direct and important point about safety. Magnesium is cleared by your kidneys, and if your kidneys are not working well, magnesium can build up to dangerous levels. Talk to your doctor and get your kidney function checked. This information is for educational purposes only. Always consult your doctor before making changes. None of this replaces prescribed treatment. If you are already on medication, these habits may complement it, but changing anything is a conversation for your physician. What I find genuinely exciting here is how much of your morning number is decided by choices you make in the ordinary, unglamorous hours after dinner. None of it is exotic, and that is exactly why it is easy to ignore. If this gave you a clearer picture, consider liking and subscribing. It helps this reach more people. And I am curious, if you have ever worn a CGM, did a post-dinner walk actually flatten your curve? Tell me what you saw.